Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the first ever episode of
the Happy Hippie Podcast.
I'm your host, Kilee Iris, and welcome, everybody. This is so exciting. This is a new chapter of my life. If only this microphone picked up my heartbeat. Guys, I'm actually kind of nervous, low-key. I wasn't expecting to be nervous, but honestly, I'm kind of feeling like 8th grade 100-meter sprint track and field is happening all over again. I don't know why I'm sweating this profusely, but hey, I mean, it's the first episode. Obviously, I think nerves are kind of normal, so welcome. Also, this is my first time kind of coming out of hermit mode in a year. I've been missing in action. So, I don't know, it feels a little weird to, talk. I'm so excited. I've been wanting to do this podcast for so long. For those of you who might not know already, I used to have a podcast when I was 17, which is, first of all, terrifying. Picture your 17-year-old self just out on the internet having a podcast. That's a terrifying thought. I actually can't watch my old podcasts or YouTube videos for that matter. I don't know. I just feel like I'm a different person than I was 2 weeks ago, let alone than 3 years ago. You know what I mean? Yeah, I wanted to start this podcast essentially to wake up the masses because I'm sick of being an awake person in a world full of sleep people. I'm going to talk about so many different kinds of things on this podcast. There really isn't one specific niche here. On this podcast, I'm going to tell you guys so many untold stories of my life that has never seen the light of day. Which is thrilling, exciting, but also at the same time, absolutely terrifying. But I'm excited. I would very much so consider myself to be a hippie. For me, I'd say a hippie is a free spirit who doesn't live in the box society has put everybody in. And, I very much fill that role. Most of my life, I've kind of felt like a black sheep. I've had a hard time fitting in, and as of recently, mostly in the past year, I've kind of fallen in love with the idea of just being me and no longer playing the roles that society kind of expects from me. And I think that definitely is what being a hippie is all about. I also lived, I was homeless for a little while. I lived in a 1974 van that literally barely started on a tiny little surfing village with a population of less than 1,000 people. Every single day, I would wake up, go to the beach, surf all day, go back to the rainforest where me and all my friends camped out, and I repeated this lifestyle for an entire summer. And I think living like a hippie, honestly, completely transformed my perspective on reality and everything it entails. There's something about living such a simple life that I just fell in love with. I don't know, by the end of van life, I was extremely grateful for just running water. And I don't know, I think there's such beauty in a reset that comes with that. Before living in the van, I was literally living in Los Angeles, which is a complete 180, right? It's such a materialistic world, and it's go, 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 crazy. And then going from that to living in a van in the middle of nowhere was such a 180, but it was for the character development. It really was the plot. Before I was a hippie, I feel like I was like a caterpillar, and now I'm just a butterfly. I've transformed so much over the past few years, and I'm just so excited to show you guys the real me. I've been doing social media for a really long time, but I don't know, I just feel like there's been a kind of a disconnect in some of my content in the sense of, I don't know, I think I've had a hard time fully being my authentic self on the internet just because I take that back. I feel like I've been pretty authentic. I just feel like I was getting trapped in the rat race of the numbers, and it's really just a negative place to be. Anyways, I feel like I'm kind of all over the place. Let me just start off by saying this. I feel like we're 7 minutes in probably. Okay, there's definitely two groups of people probably listening to this podcast. Some of you guys probably know who I am already. You've been following me for a while. Or some of you guys are new and have absolutely no idea who I am. So basically on today's episode, it's the very first episode, I thought I'd just talk a little bit about me before we get into too much crazy topics, because I really want to go into the deep, murky waters on this podcast. Like, I am going to be talking, just a little warning, I guess. I think what's going to come out of this podcast is, I think there's going to be a certain group of people that absolutely love me. Okay, they're going to love what I have to say, my opinion, and what I have to share. And I think there's definitely going to be a group of people who get extremely triggered by the things I will be talking about on this podcast. I'm going to go over a lot of things that might be deemed as controversial. I don't know. It's not controversial to me because it's just the literal truth of the world. And I'm just sick of living in a world of lies. And I'm really excited to kind of just deliver some of the information I've learned over the years to you guys. You know, I've been through, quite honestly, a lot of fucked experiences, which kind of suck, but, you know, they've brought me some amazing life lessons that I'm going to get to share with you guys on this podcast. So welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you could be here. Truly, I am. I missed podcasting so much. You know, podcasting is definitely one of my favorite forms of content just because I feel like it's so authentic. And there's something with long form content that I feel like you can't get across from like an 8-second TikTok. So yeah, the last time I was filming a podcast, I was 17 years old, which is so crazy to think about. Like, first of all, picture your 17-year-old self on a podcast, okay? For the entire world to judge. Like, that's a terrifying thought. But that's out there on the internet and exists, so that's, yeah, I can't watch my old podcasts or even my old YouTube videos for that matter. I don't know. I just can't do it. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm going to dive into a little bit about who I am in this episode. But for the people who already know who I am, you guys are probably like, Kilee, girl, where have you been? I've kind of been missing in action the past year on social media. It kind of started off as like a little innocent dopamine detox, little social media detox. And then all of a sudden, a year's gone by. No, there's definitely a lot more to that story. I'm going to dive in to the details of this specific event in another podcast episode. I'll definitely drop every ounce of tea on this situation. But essentially, after the van broke down, I moved into this house on the island. And long story short, essentially, I caught my roommate before he could attempt murder on me, which I know probably sounds crazy. But yeah, it was crazy, and it was honestly quite traumatizing. So that's what made me come back to Toronto, was to heal, and that's kind of why I took a break. You know, social media is so much fun, and I've been doing it most of my life, but there's definitely cons that come with the game, and, you know, stalkers are one of them. Unfortunately, I've dealt with stalkers for most of my life, and it kind of just got to the point where I was really just in constant state of fear for my safety, to the point where it kind of just drove me into hermit mode for a year. A quick little recap on 2022. 2022 was quite the roller coaster ride, if I do say so myself. I think I went to 6 funerals in the whole year, and I lost everything and everyone in my life, essentially. Everything fell apart. Absolutely everything. And I was at rock bottom. For the first time in a long time, I would consider myself at rock bottom. You know, I've done a complete life shift in the past year. It was a really tough year for me. And I don't know, it really sucked, but at the same time, I feel like I really needed to lose everything and everyone in my life to like find me. You know, it was in the journey of losing everyone and everything that I love in which I finally found myself. And I don't know, I think that's a beautiful thing. I would consider myself very much so a modern day alchemist, in the sense I always transmute my pain into beauty, you know? For me, being a creative, I very much so allow myself to feel. If I'm going through any kind of negative emotions or situations in life, I will fully allow myself. I have formulated my life in a way, which I'm grateful, in which I can allow myself the time to heal if need be, and I think normally I bounce back pretty quick. And if I'm in my healing stage, it usually doesn't take too long. But I don't know, there was something about someone who I thought was a friend who was also a roommate, just like literally about to murder me, and then me catching him before it happened, that it really caught me off guard. A lot of crazy things have happened in my life, but that one I actually didn't see coming. You think all the knives laying around the house would have been a little bit of a red flag, but no! Kylie decided to ignore the red flags and pretend they were green. No, I felt the calling to leave the island, and then I didn't. And sometimes in life, shitty things happen for the universe to like wake you up to kind of get you on the right path. But it was in that lonely journey, that dark night of the soul, in which I found the light. And I'm so excited to share the things I've learned with you guys on this podcast. And in terms of like what you can expect on this podcast, I'm going to share obviously a bunch of stories about my life and get you guys kind of the inside scoop on what it's like living in this brain of mine. I'm a very deep, complex soul, and I don't think I've ever really shown that side of myself on the internet. I think I kind of was very comfortable hiding behind that comedy mask and that like superficial jokes and things like that. Obviously, I still love that. Comedy is a huge part of who I am, and it's really one of my main coping mechanisms that have gotten me through some of my darkest times. However, I feel like the social matrix can really pull you into playing a character. And when you reach the point in which you start getting monetized for playing a specific character and you get rewarded in the algorithm, I think it gets really really hard to leave that kind of rat race trap that is social media. I started the channel that I have now on YouTube when I was 16 years old. Once you grow an audience for a certain kind of character, it's almost like you kind of get trapped in that character. And it's like, I don't know, I felt like I was trapped in a character. I just feel like there was a certain phase in my life where I really tried to like fit in. And it's like, I've more so recently come to the terms that I don't fit in. I've always kind of stood out like a sore thumb. And I've recently just started accepting and embracing that, and life has been getting so much easier. Also, to every single person who have sent me a DM, messaged me on Instagram, asking where I was, I just want you to know I'm really bad, first of all, at responding to DMs. I always read them. However, I'm terrible at responding, and for that, I am sorry. But I just wanted to say, I really, really appreciate you, and thank you. And also, I'm sorry. I feel like there's a decent chunk of people that kind of felt abandoned by me, and that broke my heart. To the people who consumed my content regularly, I really needed that time alone to find who I am, but I can't lie, I felt extremely guilty. I felt terrible just like leaving the people who loved watching me, supported me. Some of the people who support me have literally been supporting me since I was 16 years old, posting that first YouTube video. And like, for you OG people, shout out to y'all. I freaking love you guys, and thank you so much for supporting me. It's sometimes in those most painful, dark moments of your life, you can find the most beautiful gifts. And for me, that comes creatively. Sometimes when I'm in the most pain is when I think of the best, painting idea. I feel like a lot of my creative inspiration actually comes to me in moments of pain. So that's why I'm a huge advocate on allowing myself to feel. And also, what is emotions? Like, emotions are energy in motions. It is so important for you to feel your emotions. And I think it's been so normalized by society to kind of just like flip the switch and turn off your emotions just because that's the easier route. But people don't understand the importance of feeling and how the actual manifestation of emotions work. Because when you don't experience your emotions and you actually hold that in and bottle it up, it will need to be manifested in some kind of way, and it usually ends up being some kind of physical ailment. So people don't realize if you don't actually allow yourself to feel, it can cause more harm than good in the long run. Feeling is healing. And I needed to take a little bit longer to heal than I thought I would. But hey, here I am. I'm back and I'm better than ever. I'm so beyond excited for this podcast. By the way, quick little disclaimer. If you're watching on YouTube, literally yesterday, I was like, you know what? That wall behind me on the podcast is really plain and boring. Let's add some spice. And you know what? Considering I did this like mural in a day, I'd say for the turnaround rate, I didn't do too shabby of a job. I kind of wanted the backdrop to look like a portal to the universe. And it was like coming out of my wall. I don't know how great I executed that. But again, considering I did it in a day, I would say I didn't do too bad of a job. Oh my God, I totally forgot to mention. Another thing for the people who might have been wondering what I've been up to in the past year and where I've been. I totally forgot to talk about this, but I gave birth to my baby. Guys, I gave birth to my child called Lunar Loft. She is an astrology, metaphysical, and wellness shop. For those of you who don't know, I'm a huge astrology nerd. Okay, I absolutely love astrology, and I also love art. So the first product I actually created for Lunar Loft was the zodiac art prints. So I created like a tattoo style artwork, kind of like a simple tattoo lion style artwork for each of the zodiacs. If you guys are interested in anything astrology related, definitely go check out my baby, lunarloft.ca. We also sell zodiac candles and crystal bracelets, and we have tons of exciting new products coming in the future. Guys, when I tell you this business is my child, like this business is my child. I have poured so much effort, energy, and love into this little baby. Also, having ADHD and a solo podcast is going to be such an interesting combination. Even like this podcast so far, I feel like I've gone off topic 4 times. And like, have I even started the episode? I don't remember. Oh, God, we love ADHD for that. For my zodiac girlies out there listening, if you're wondering what my sun sign is, I am a Libra. You already know, ruled by Venus, the planet of love, beauty, and money. Actually, the Venus is this one right here. Oh, just kidding. It's up there. For those of you who are listening, I'm pointing to the planets that I painted on the wall yesterday, trying to create a last-minute backdrop for this podcast. I just tripped over my words there. English, ooh. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got started in the entertainment industry, and just kind of a little bit about me in general. I've always been a creative. I remember being like 8 years old and pointing up at the screen and being like, Mom, I'm going to be on there one day. Like, I was always obsessed with everything entertainment at a very young age. Even before YouTube existed, I created YouTube videos. I would film videos of me cooking. I'd play characters. I'd put on shows. Like, I was always kind of one of those kids. And I actually started my first ever YouTube channel. Actually, wait, let's go way back. If we're talking about the social media origin story, you guys gotta hear it all. So I actually started, my very first time on social media was Vine. And I used to make Bob Duncan edits. Like, that's literally how I started on social media. That's so funny. I also started my first YouTube channel really young. I actually used to make polymer clay charms, and I made a YouTube channel making those. And then after that channel, I think it was 6th or 7th grade, I started my next channel. And I used to be super emo as a kid, which is so funny. But yeah, essentially I had a YouTube channel where I would show people how to do like their emo hair. And God, I've got bullied off of that YouTube channel real quick. I remember being like 11 and like the comments were like, you can't listen to Maroon 5 and be emo. And I started crying. I was like, the internet's not for me. But no, I came back probably halfway through high school. I decided to take it seriously. And from there, I started posting like twice a week. And that's what got me started on social media. I feel like a lot of people don't know this about me, but I also am very much well diverse in the traditional media industry as well. I got scouted for my first acting and modeling agency. I think I was 12 or 13 years old. I was actually at a fair in Toronto with my friend. It was so random. But yeah, I got scouted. The girl came up to me and I signed with that agency, and that's kind of how I first got started in that industry. I remember I went to Miami for a showcase with that company, and basically there was a bunch of recruiters across the whole globe that went and to seek talent. I remember like so many of the cool agencies wanted me, like Tokyo, like all these cool places. But when it came to sitting down and like speaking with the agency, one of the first questions they asked me was, so, when do your braces come off? And at that point, I literally just got them put on, and I knew it was going to be like 4 years. So I kind of took a break from traditional media because the braces just didn't mix. Nobody wanted me with braces. So that's kind of what got me into social media. I was like, okay, if I can't do traditional media, I'll do social media in the meantime. And that's kind of like what happened there. My first ever time being on TV, I actually remember this so vividly because, I've been acting since I was 12. Working my ass off, essentially, to try to be on TV. And I remember my first time being on TV was literally in quarantine, and it was from my social media. This was like at the beginning of quarantine. Everyone was like doing their hair at home. And I remember on CBS, they had an entire like celebrity episode where all the celebrities like did their hair at home and like were like FaceTiming a hairstylist during the like a very beginning of the cough 19. Yeah, and I remember creating a video of me dyeing my hair at home, and then that got on TV. And then shortly after that, one of my TikToks got on like MTV Ridiculousness. And it was just so funny how like my first time ever being on TV was like from my social media, not from traditional media. But all this time later, literally 9 years later, getting that lead movie role, it's actually surreal. It does, if I'm being honest, like it actually doesn't even feel real. I've been wanting this for so long to the point where I'm like, wait, what? It's actually here now? Basically, that's just like a brief synopsis, brief little summary of my journey throughout the entertainment industry. For those of you who don't know, I'm a multifaceted queen, so I'm not just a creative. The left side of my brain isn't just active, but the right side is as well. I feel like that's actually something a lot of people don't know of me because I've never really shown that side of me online much, but I'm also a hustler. Like I've been a business woman since I was literally 16 years old. I'm definitely going to dive into this deeper in another episode and go into full details. But what was I just talking about again? ADHD. Okay. Oh, right. I've never really shown this side of me, so I feel like a lot of people just don't know this about me, but I'm a hustler. So yeah, I'm going to tell you guys briefly about my entrepreneurial journey and what that's entailed. I started my first store when I was 16 years old, actually. I was drop shipping, and that's what got me started. I wasn't one of those like multi-millionaire overnight drop shippers, but I definitely made a lot of money. I also lost a lot of money, and I learned a lot throughout that journey. I actually have such vivid memories of like drop shipping in high school. Like I remember in my senior year of high school, I would come to school only once a week, if I'm being honest. I've been naturally pretty intelligent most of my life. I was never one that had to try too hard in school, if I'm being honest. Like I've gotten straight A's my entire life. So by senior year of high school is when I knew like I wasn't wanting to pursue post-secondary. So I just stopped giving a fuck. I remember I went to high school maybe once a week. And I remember my first period class was math. It was like the end of the school year and we were learning finances. Oh, I'll never forget this day. I remember we were doing like a worksheet. We were going through the lesson as a class, and like one of the examples on the worksheet was like, this broke college student needs to afford to live, like figure out a solution, right? And essentially the entire math problem was like showing how to save money. And I remember the teacher, he like took a moment to like explain how in college he would order pizza. Like he would order pizza when it was on sale and buy like boxes and boxes of pizza and then just like store them in this freezer. That was his entire diet, and he would just like eat that to save money. Anyways, he was basically telling everybody as if like we should all do that. And I don't know why, but that really didn't sit right with me. And my little 16-year-old ass raised my hand. And if for those of you who don't know, who haven't watched any of my old videos or seen kind of like the way I am, teenage Kilee scares me, bro. Like I don't know, she was just ruthless. 16-year-old Kilee puts her hand up. I just remember being like, see, this is exactly the problem with the education system, is that it teaches people how to save money and not how to make money. And then I remember taking the problem and making like a 4-paged step-by-step solution on how he can take his extra $30 a month and like turn it into $10,000 a month. Anyways, I did this whole like step-by-step thing. I don't know why I'm bringing this up randomly, but I don't know, it just popped up in my head. So this kind of just shows a little bit about how I feel like my brain worked. When I was 16, it's actually so crazy to think of, like 16-year-old Kilee. I literally was posting twice a week on YouTube. Drop shipping, didn't have one, not 2, but 3 drop shipping stores. For those of you who are wondering what kind of niches they were, I had like a camping store, a bathing suit store, and a makeup store. I was running those stores while also posting twice a week on YouTube, while also running a digital marketing agency with my boyfriend. Like I thought I was a hustler now. Like I look back at 16-year-old Kilee and I'm like, how? How did you do that? Also, just running a digital marketing agency with my boyfriend at the time was definitely an interesting learning experience. Same with after high school, I pursued a few different other business ventures. This is my problem. When I start a new business and I want to diversify my income, make another income stream, I will, obviously, if I'm winning, like, and I'm trying to pick somebody to come up with me and like rise to the top with me, I'm obviously gonna pick one of my friends, right? Wrong. I think this is one of the biggest mistakes I've learned throughout the past years is mixing friendship and business, because they don't mix. Fun fact. And I don't know, a part of me, it's like, okay, if I want to win, I want my friends to win too. So I think throughout the years, like this hasn't just happened once. This has happened multiple times throughout my business journey where I've, wanted to start a business. I've asked a friend to come and join to be a part of it and co-own the company, and then it all falls apart. It's happened a few times, and what I've learned in that process is I actually really love working alone. Hence the solo podcast. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people are probably also wondering what happened with The Dirty Truth. For those of you who don't know, that was my old podcast that I had when I was literally 16, 17 years old, which is terrifying. Please don't listen to that. Actually, no. There was a part of me that wanted to delete every single episode so bad, but then I was like, Kilee, you can't do this. This is character development. I think it's actually really cool that you can go back and listen to kind of how I used to be and see the evolution of me as a human. But I just personally can't listen or watch any old content I've made. I cringe too hard. I really can't do it. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about my family. And a lot of people ask me what ethnicity I am. I'm mostly Italian and German. I do have like a bunch of other things, but those are like the biggest parts. I'd definitely say I grew up from very humble beginnings. I grew up in a little bit of the sketchier, I'd say, area of my neighborhood. Even a lot of the friends I went to like elementary school with, like they were all like pregnant by like 16 or like OnlyFans or drugs. I don't know. I'm also like a highly sensitive human being. And I'd say I grew up with humble beginnings and definitely an emotionally unavailable household. I love my family, but in an emotional sense, I felt very abandoned fairly young. My fight or flight has been triggered at, unfortunately, a very young age and was turned on for years and years and years. And I've only actually, in more so recent years of my life, learned how to turn that off. For the first time in my life, live in peace. I feel like for the first chunk of my life, I was living in, I don't want to say a constant state of fear, but I definitely was. I don't know. I was in a constant state of fear. Obviously, growing up in a traditionally Italian household and being a highly sensitive human being was like oil and water. Didn't really mix. Yeah, so that's just like a little bit about me. Obviously, just barely scratched the surface with what we're going to get into. But, it's the first episode. I thought I'd keep it light and airy. For this being the very first episode of the podcast, I feel like this is an appropriate time to do this little disclaimer. I'm very much so well aware of how the social matrix works and what that entails. So for my own safety, I am just putting this out there. Episode 1 of the podcast, before I've told you guys anything about how I think, my perspective on the world, how things work and operate. I just want to put out there, I am not suicidal. If I ever unalive myself or go missing, just know that it wasn't me. Okay, now that I've put that out there. And be sure to stay tuned for next week. I'll have podcast episodes every Wednesday. For next week's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about the time that I died and came back to life. So that should be interesting. She really said trauma dumping. For those of you guys listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give a big thumbs up. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, please be sure to rate me 5 stars. That would mean the world to me. I'm so excited to grow this family, and that's how I really view you guys. Like, I want this relationship to be like, I want to be your best friend. I want to be your like little internet sister. That's the vibes that I'm trying to give off here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Peace.